Here's a quote by Henry Ford to get us started today. When everything is going against you, remember that the aeroplane takes off against the wind and not with it. And with OCD, so often we are fighting against what is, rather than learning to accept the turbulence of compulsive thoughts. We are trying to land the plane and demand for them to get off. It's not that we can't cope with the thoughts, but it's the idea that they are always going to be there, annoying, frustrating, prodding, and showing up exactly when we don't want them to. I think that's what most people can't abide, and it's completely understandable that you might think like that. Waking up in the morning with the knowledge and fear that compulsive thoughts might show up at any given moment is quite a daunting way to live your life. When you are constantly checking and looking for the thoughts, almost looking over your shoulder to see if they are actually creeping up on you, well, it can be, really hard to enjoy your life when you are acting in this way. And this doesn't mean that it has to be this way, though. But sadly, this is the place that I found myself for many years when I was really struggling with my own compulsive thoughts. I found myself each day being determined that today was going to be the day that I mastered the thoughts, that they weren't going to be able to catch me out this time, that I wasn't going to get stuck in that trap. I was going to be strong. I was going to be zen. I was going to control my thoughts. Now, of course, this approach, rather than taking off against the wind like a plane, actually crashed to the floor like a lead balloon. Ultimately, it didn't matter how hard I tried to not have certain thoughts. The very fact of trying to not have those thoughts, of course, made me have more of them. You might be listening along thinking, yep, that's pretty much what happens to me, and you wouldn't be alone there. This comes back to a fundamental process at the heart of OCD, namely that we are trying to control too much. Rather than learning to bring acceptance and compassion to our unwanted thoughts, we've actually got into a habit of pushing them away as soon as their ugly little faces appear. Perhaps you should accept them, but doing so is often easier said than done. Almost like an arm wrestle against someone who looks incredibly weak, but who in fact has incredible strength to burn. Trying to push your compulsive thoughts away will result in you becoming frustrated and disheartened. And this is because the tool that you're actually using to try to manage your thoughts is actually the thing that is making them worse. A thoroughly disempowering situation, and in my experience, a lack of agency, a lack of feeling like you can actually do something to manage the obsessive compulsive thoughts is at the heart of the problem. When we have agency and we think that we can actually do something about the OCD, when we actually take action and prove to ourselves that although we might still have some intrusive thoughts, that we can actually do something about them, well, that's when we feel good. That's when we actually feel like we're making real progress. So how do we do this? What does this actually involve? How do we allow ourselves to bring more acceptance to these compulsions? Because, often it really feels that we can't do that. Well, the first tip is that we need to bring more awareness to them. Up until this point, you might have been just trying to dodge and duck those intrusive thoughts. And you need to be able to bring a bit more awareness to this. See if you can just sit quietly somewhere for a few minutes and observe your thoughts. You don't need to do anything special with them, just observe. The brain is often very busy and likes to give us all kinds of difficult thoughts, but we don't need to be taken away by them all the time. If you can just sit and observe, you may be surprised that, they don't catch you out quite so much. Another helpful strategy is simply to write down all of the negative and compulsive thoughts that your mind is telling you without arguing with them or disputing them in any way. literally just write them down, as doing this actually helps to create separation between you and your thoughts. As you may know, you are not your thoughts. They are passing phenomena, and you want to think of them as being like leaves on a stream. They will drift on down that stream when we let them. By writing down the typical thoughts that you have, somehow it makes it a little bit easier then in the future to spot those thoughts and to just allow them to float on down that river. Another approach is to learn to create space between your thoughts and your reaction to them. Bear in mind that compulsive thoughts are a reaction to fearful, obsessive thoughts that you clearly don't like. The compulsive thought is then an attempt to get rid of that fear or to dampen it down in some way. When we actually tune into this process by learning to meditate for 2 or 3 minutes on what we are actually feeling as these thoughts are flying through our minds, that slowing down and observing can actually help us to create a little bit of space between the fearful thought and the compulsive response to it. Remember, we don't need to have everything figured out all the time. We don't need to have 100% certainty in order to get going in our lives. We can allow a little fear, emotional pain or discomfort. And in fact, if we do, often those things begin to go down a little bit anyway. Learning to sit quietly and observe your thoughts and the sensations in the body in this way can actually be transformative. Finally, see if you can apply the principles of acceptance commitment therapy. Whilst the temptation to deny thoughts, push them away, or get frustrated with them is completely understandable at times, ACT teaches us to get back into our lives and to bring our fears and our thoughts along for the ride. We don't need to feel a certain way to start living our lives. By observing the thoughts that are actually there anyway and choosing to get on with our lives, focusing on our values and goals and trying to allow the thoughts to be there in the background, we can sometimes begin to realize that actually things aren't quite as bad as we perhaps thought, that we can actually do this. And although compulsive thoughts can be difficult at times, we do actually have some control over them. But the trick is to stop demanding that control. In order for us to truly take back control, we first have to bring acceptance. But when we do, we might be surprised at what we can actually achieve. So there we go. Many thanks. I really hope that you enjoyed that. Please do subscribe. It would be amazing if you could do that. And if you have any questions at all, do please let me know. Just a quick reminder that if you want to get a free session, all you need to do to get that is to head over to my website, www.robertjamescoaching.com. And there you can leave me a message and we can arrange the free session. And now just a quick reminder of my disclaimer. Any information that you view on my website, Instagram page, Facebook group, or anywhere else online, or any information that you listen to on the podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for actual medical or mental health advice from a doctor, psychologist, or any other medical or mental health professional.